Sometimes you just want to eat a fully loaded handheld burrito filled with juicy skirt steak, french fries, and smothered in a rich sauce. You might assume you'll need to order takeout for it, but it's easier to make at home than you think. First thing we're gonna do is get to work on our marinade. I'm gonna grab a small bowl and then toss in 1/4 of a cup of soy sauce, 1/4 of a cup of olive oil, and 1/2 a cup of freshly squeezed orange juice. And I actually mean freshly squeezed. Squeeze yourself and don't use any of the fake orange juice from concentrate. It ruins the flavor. 1/2 a cup is about 1.5 to 2 oranges, by the way. Next, we're gonna toss in the zest of one of our juiced oranges, which to do, you're gonna need a microplane, and then you're just gonna run your microplane around your orange to gather up all that beautiful zest, which gives you the bulk of the orange flavor. I'm also gonna throw in the zest of one lime, which we will zest it the same way as we did the orange. It's just a little smaller. And I'm also gonna juice all that lime as well and toss it in our marinade. We'll next toss in 2 minced chipotle peppers, which this is gonna give us the bulk of that barbecue smoky flavor. To prep our chipotle peppers, I'm just gonna mince them with a knife on a separate cutting board because they do tend to stain very easily. I'll also throw in 3 cloves of crushed garlic, 2 teaspoons of cumin, and 1/4 of a cup of minced cilantro. Apologies if you have that soap tasting gene, just use Italian parsley if you do. We'll close it off by freshly cracking some black pepper in there and hitting it with 1 tablespoon of salt. You did hear that correctly, 1 tablespoon of salt. You want this marinade to taste slightly salty, so that way it's properly seasoning our steak. 99% of marinades are usually under seasoned and they don't utilize the most important ingredient, salt. Next, I'm gonna grab our meat of choice, which we have here is skirt steak. I have about 2 pounds of skirt steak, which is more than enough, and you can also use flank steak as well. They both are used interchangeably. To prep our steaks, I'm gonna cut them in 5-inch segments, and this is actually an extremely crucial, important step. I'll explain the significance as to why we're doing this when we get to cooking the steaks later on. Once our steaks are cut, I'm gonna toss them in a Ziploc bag, and then I'm gonna pour all of our marinade inside that bag as well. I'm gonna seal it as close as possible to airtight as I can, and I'm gonna mix our marinade into our steak, making sure it's fully covering every square inch. Now you can marinate this sucker overnight and you'll get amazing results, but I'm just gonna do 30 minutes because I'm currently really hungry. In the meantime, let's get to work on making our homemade tortillas, because let's be honest, store-bought tortillas are not that good and they make your stomach hurt, but that could be just me. We're gonna grab a medium-sized bowl and we're gonna toss in 2 cups of all-purpose flour as well as 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. With our whisk, we're gonna whisk all of our ingredients together, and now we're gonna throw in 3/4 of a cup of warm water. I just microwaved it for 30 seconds, and 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Traditionally, you're supposed to use lard or vegetable shortening, but I think using vegetable oil is a little better because I feel like you're more likely to use this again versus this. I actually don't know how long I've had this. I never opened it, but the expiration date is April 28th, 2023. This is crazy expired. Now we're gonna whisk all those ingredients together until a really rough dough ball starts to form, and it's pretty sticky, honestly. Now I'm gonna sprinkle a heavy tablespoon of flour on our work surface, and we're gonna knead this dough for about a minute. You might need to throw down 1 to 2 more tablespoons of flour to incorporate it into the dough if it gets too sticky, but in the end, you should have a nice, smooth dough. Now I'm gonna cut these dough balls into 6 even pieces, measuring about 90 grams each. I'll then grab one of our pieces and pinch all the dough together and roll it out into a small ball in my hands. Don't overthink it, it's just like playing with Play-Doh. You should have 6 balls of dough, and I'm gonna lay a towel over them and let them rest for 6 to 10 minutes. After it's rested for 10 minutes, we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of flour on our cutting board as well as on top of our dough ball. We're then with the rolling pin gonna roll it out, and then we're gonna turn it slightly and continue to roll it out again. You're gonna keep doing this motion until you've rolled it out nice and thin. If it sticks to the cutting board or your rolling pin at all, just sprinkle a little bit more flour on it. Once you got it to the size you want, we're gonna remove it from the cutting board and then lay it down on a piece of parchment paper. We're gonna continue the same steps for all the dough balls, and make sure you're laying them down separately on their own parchment paper or they will stick together. Once you have all of your tortillas rolled out and individually parchment papered, we're gonna now grab a large pan, the largest you have really, and we're gonna set it to high heat to preheat it. Once it's hot, we're gonna throw down our tortilla and it's only gonna cook for 15 to 20 seconds per side. You can see here little bubbles are starting to form and it's ready to flip and it's looking fabulous so far. I'll cook this side for another 15 to 20 seconds and then I'm gonna throw it in a towel and close it off so it steams and stays warm. You should have a bunch of beautifully cooked tortillas that are very soft and pliable, perfect for a burrito. They also smell and taste absolutely phenomenal. But now it's time for this burrito to have a little acidic boost. We're making our Pico De Gallo sauce. I'm gonna grab 2 ripe vine tomatoes, and to prep them, I'm gonna remove the stem from the tomatoes, and then I'm gonna grab our knife, slicing along the whole tomato, giving us nice circular pieces. From here, I'll stack as many pieces as I feel comfortable, and I'm gonna run my knife through it, giving us some long planks, and then I'm gonna rotate it, and then run my knife through it again, giving us a nice dice. I'm gonna follow the same steps for our other tomato as well, and then I'm gonna throw them in a strainer in a bowl. Stick with me here, it's gonna make sense real soon. I'm gonna sprinkle in 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm gonna mix it so it gets thoroughly combined with our tomatoes. We're now gonna move this to the side and leave it alone for 10 minutes, and I'll explain why very shortly. Let's just finish the rest of our chopping work. I'm gonna grab 1/4 of a red onion, and to prep it, we're gonna cut the tip off and then split it in half, and we're gonna peel off that outside layer. I'm next gonna cut it in half again, and then I'm gonna give it vertical cuts along the whole onion, and then I'm gonna run my knife and give it a nice fine chopping. And as a finishing touch, I'm gonna put it in a container, hit it with some water, and then drain off all that water. This will wash off some of that bitterness, giving you a more rounded, really better flavor. Next, we're gonna grab 1 jalapeno, and to prep it, we're gonna cut the tip off, split it in half, and we're gonna scoop out all the inside seeds and flesh. We're then gonna flatten it down on the cutting board and then slice along the whole jalapeno, giving us nice planks. I'm gonna rotate those planks, and then I'm gonna run my knife through them, giving us a nice chopped jalapeno. We'll now grab 2 tablespoons of fresh cilantro, and to prep it, we're just gonna run our knife through it about 3 to 4 times until you get a nice mincing. Back to our bowl, you can see the salt has now pulled a lot of the moisture of our tomatoes out. And this is a super important step because if you didn't do this, your burrito will get crazy soggy because of all that moisture. Plus, it also seasons the tomatoes quite wonderfully, might I add. Now in that bowl, I'm gonna throw in our diced red onions, our diced jalapenos, our chopped cilantro, and I'm gonna crush 2 cloves of garlic. Now with a spoon, I'm gonna give it a good mixing before cracking in a few cranks of black pepper, give it 1 final mixing, and now this is your Pico De Gallo. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it is a little spicy because of the jalapeno. If you want a non-spicy alternative, throw in half a poblano pepper instead of a jalapeno. Now let's work on our guac that's gonna go in the burrito. We'll first grab 1 avocado, and admittingly, this is not a fully ripe avocado, but we'll figure it out. I'm gonna run my knife into the avocado until I hit the seed, and then I'm gonna wrap it around the seed and then split the 2 pieces open. Now I'm gonna dig my knife into the side of the seed and then just pry it open, but as you can see, it didn't work. So I'll instead do the dangerous whacking of the seed and then twisting, and that didn't work either. This avocado is for some reason stubborn, but I ended up getting it removed with that first method I showed you eventually. Now I'm gonna carefully give the avocado vertical cuts along the whole side, trying not to poke the knife through. I'm also gonna rotate it and give it horizontal cuts as well before scooping it into a small bowl. Now in that bowl, I'm gonna toss in about 1/8 of a minced red onion that's been washed as well, 1.5 tablespoons of minced cilantro, the juice of 1 lemon cheek, which is just basically a slice of a lemon, a few cranks of black pepper, and half a teaspoon of salt. Give that a very thorough mixing, and now this is your guac. Now let's get to work on our French fries, and prepare yourself for a very hot take because we're using frozen bagged fries. Now some of you might say, Xander, why are you gonna go out of the way and make tortillas from scratch, but you're not gonna make the French fries from scratch? And if you want my my honest opinion, I think making French fries from scratch is significantly harder than making tortillas from scratch. If you want to do it right, you gotta boil them first, and then you gotta fry them twice, and you have a bunch of oil everywhere and left over. And they're delicious that way, don't get me wrong, but I think frozen French fries are just as good for a recipe like this. Now we're first going to need our air fryer, and in the tray, we're going to toss in a handful of our frozen French fries. I'll next hit it with some spray oil, shaking them to make sure everything's fully coated, and I'll throw them back in the air fryer at 400 degrees for around 8 minutes. At the 8-minute mark, I'm gonna give them a nice little shaking to make sure nothing is stuck, and then I'm gonna throw it back in our air fryer for an additional 6 minutes. After an additional 6 minutes, I'm gonna pour our French fries in a small bowl, and then I'm gonna toss them with a little bit of salt, and now you have perfectly cooked, delicious French fries that took a fraction of the amount of time to make. Now let's cook our steak. I'm gonna grab 3 pieces of our marinated portion skirt steak, and then with a paper towel, I'm gonna dry off the outside of it. Patting it dry will help you get a better sear, and because we're not grilling this and we're cooking it inside, it will get very smoky, so I'm trying to lower the amount of smoke that's gonna happen in my apartment. Either way, I'm gonna now grab a stainless steel pan, setting it to high heat, and I'm gonna pour in about 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in there. I'm now gonna throw 3 of our pieces of the steak in our hot pan and let it sear for 1 to 2 minutes. I'm gonna flip it, but I'm only gonna sear this side for another minute because, as you can see, my place is getting super smoky. My fire alarm ended up going off a couple times and I couldn't deal with it. But I did get a good enough sear that I'm actually happy with it, and I'm gonna finish this in the oven. You can see here the internal temperature of the steak is actually 115 degrees, and I'm aiming for 130, so I'm gonna throw it in the oven and set it to 350 degrees convection bake, and I'll check on it in probably 5 minutes. 7 minutes later, I'm gonna pull our steaks out of the oven, and you can see the internal temperature is a perfect 130 degrees, which is about a medium rare. Now we need to let our steaks rest for 10 minutes, and in that time, we're gonna make a sauce with our marinade. Now I'm gonna grab a small pot and a strainer, and I'm gonna strain off all the solids from our marinade into the pot. From here, I'm gonna pour in 1 cup of chicken stock, and then I'm gonna put it on a burner and set it to high heat. You want it to reach a rapid boil, so that way it kills off any raw beef juices that might be in there. You're gonna keep that rolling boil until the mixture has reduced by half, and then we're gonna cut the heat and we're gonna grab 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. I'm then gonna grab 1 tablespoon of our liquid, pouring it in our cornstarch, and I'm gonna mix the liquid and the cornstarch together. We're making a cornstarch slurry here, and once it's fully mixed, we're gonna pour that into our pot and mix it as well. Now turn the heat back on and constantly mix that liquid until you start to feel it thicken because of the cornstarch. Once it's thickened to your liking, cut the heat and then pour it into a separate container. This is now a delicious sauce that pairs perfectly with our steak because it was already marinated with it. Checking back on our steaks, they've rested, and now it's time to cut into them. Now I want to cut these suckers against the grain, so if you see the grains are going along this way, we're going to cut it this way. This is why we portioned them this way at the beginning of this video, because that way it gives us perfect little slices that are bite-sized. Cutting it against the grain, by the way, gives it a more tender and juicier bite when you bite into it. Also, I think the cook on this is perfect. This is my ideal medium rare, really. Now let's build our California burrito. I'm gonna grab 2 tortillas. Yes, 2 tortillas. I want this to be extra large. In that tortilla, I'm gonna scoop and spread our guacamole. Then I'm gonna hit it with all of our meat, followed by both regular French fries and shoestring French fries. I personally love these little suckers. They give a perfect little crunchy texture to them. Optional, but I think it's great for the texture. I'll next hit it with our fresh homemade Pico De Gallo, and lastly, I'll hit it with some freshly grated medium cheddar cheese. Now I'm going to attempt to roll this sucker into a burrito, but admittingly, I might have overfilled it with everything, and I actually needed a 3rd tortilla on top to hold everything together. It'll be way easier if there was less inside, but I was able to roll it up, tuck the sides in, and finish that roll, and then I carefully transferred it into into a pan, which I didn't realize how big this thing is. It's almost bigger than my pan. It barely fit in there. I definitely overdid it, to say the least. Either way, we're gonna toast it on this side and the other side to fully seal it and protect it and lock in all those flavors. Once it's nicely toasted, I'm gonna split it in half and reveal a beautiful cross section with oozing cheese. This was supposed to be a regular California burrito, but now all of a sudden it's a super ultimate California burrito. You could drizzle that beautiful sauce we made with the marinade and boom, indulge in this wonderful meal. If you like this video, please check out my 5 high protein recipes video. Thank you so much for watching, and please hit the like and subscribe button.